Thanks for that smooth outro, Larry. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the session number 2 of the Work-Based Learning Bootcamp as part of the WBL Institute. We are so excited you guys are back with us, and we definitely are looking forward to digging into the content for today. Today's session is titled Identifying Appropriate Partners. So hopefully that is also a huge element within work-based learning that you guys would love to talk a little bit more about, expound on today. So moving to the next slide. We always have to go to the landing page because we want to make sure that you guys are aware that, here's where you're going to go to register. You can definitely still sign up for the next 2 sessions, 3 and 4 within the bootcamp. We are going to be rounding out the month of April, excuse me, with all of these sessions because we think it's really, really critical, especially as we go into planning for the next school year. So we do encourage you to continue to look for the upcoming sessions through June, ending in focus groups. We're going to have some focus groups to talk to you guys about what your thoughts are in terms of the entire institute and thinking about ways that we can continue to use the resources that we have put together. So stay tuned for that. And moving to the next slide. We always want to go over the norms just to make sure for anybody who is coming in new today that we kind of establish what the environment is like in these sessions. So we want everyone to participate. We do hope that this is useful for you. We're going to sprinkle some polls in between just to get a sense of how people are feeling. We want hopefully for everyone to commit to being present during the sessions and obviously during the breakout, because the breakout is where you can drill down into the content, talk with your colleagues, maybe get your questions answered. So we do encourage that. And then we also want you to speak up live and engage in the chat. Some of you have been gracious enough to ask questions very, very consistently. Others of you who are shyer and off camera have typed in questions and we'll answer them either way. We just want to make sure that we hear from you. So please speak up. And once you get into your small groups, we do encourage you to show your face if possible. And then also we want to make sure that you take the exit survey because every week, we want to rate how these sessions go. We do also report back about how folks are engaging with this content to make sure that as we complete the end of the institute, we can get a good sense of how you guys liked what we did and also what maybe areas you still might need assistance and support in, what those are. So moving to the next slide. Larry and I are taking this one today. We do have the support of our CTE team, folks who have done planning with us, folks who have been helpful with suggestions and, actually content as well. So we do have folks from all of the CTE sub-teams represented, and hopefully they will also be able to chime in within breakouts and during the Q&A session. So we are always happy and grateful for their support. Moving to the next slide. So the objectives for today, we really want to be clear as to what is it we're covering, and also for those of you who are going to be reviewing the recording, just to have a sense of what things we were targeting in this topic area. So we really want to review why partnership is critical within the approval process. We always want to refer back to the NYSET approval process because we think it really helps to put things into context and to frame why all of these things are so important. We know funding is not the be all and end all, but it does help to shape, the reasons why you do the things you do. So we do want to bring it back to that, especially for those of you who are actually looking to be approved or reapproved. We also want to discuss the 5 P's of partnership that's coming up within the slides. We feel like partnership has some steps, and there are some areas where some folks are doing really well and areas where folks are being challenged. So we're going to take you through what those P's are. And then we want to outline tips for marketing your students to partners. We think it's really critical for your partners to understand who you work for, We're all working for the benefit of our students, and we want to make sure that partners are aware of not just the wonderful talents and the positives that your students have, but also the things that are challenging to them and ways that partners might be supportive of the populations you work with. We want to share strategies for successful partnerships. Once you've brought a partner in the fold, it's not a done deal. The maintenance of that relationship goes on, and we do want to make sure that bridges aren't burnt and that you're able to continue to engage partners even more deeply as the years go on in your school. And then finally, we want to hear from your colleagues. That's the point of the breakouts. And hopefully we have folks who are here who can share what's working well for them, especially as we go into the summer, looking at partnerships that will be helpful within SYP and SIF funding, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully we will also have an opportunity to hear from you guys. So moving to the next slide. We showed these screens last week, and we want to continue to make reference to them. The NYSED compliance elements do have some points that include partners specifically. So we've highlighted that the curriculum crosswalk for each course that shows the alignment to academic, CDOS, and industry, CCTC, or career cluster framework standard do have a point of reference to your partners in terms of your industry connection. And so we want to make sure that you're thinking about all of these things as it relates back to who your partner is and what your pathway is. Also, the next bullet is clearly identify external review members, and two of those members should be industry partner folks. One of them could and should also be a post-secondary partner. So even here, partners are being mentioned, and the hope is that schools already have those connections as they look to start or continue their approval. So going into this process without partners or without partners who can speak to what's happening at your school and talk about your CTE programming definitely is a challenge, and it's a piece that we would love for schools to continue to strengthen, because your partners should be able to discuss, especially during the approval, what they have seen in terms of the engagement piece. So moving to the next slide, the final bullet here that we think is important is the training plan and employer supervisor evaluation. So those are two examples of where your partner is going to be directly engaged, so that they understand what the students are being asked to do. They can be clear about the expectation for any internship or any type of engagement opportunity. So you always want to make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of the plan and the evaluation. So those are some of the elements that we think are specifically partner related, and we hope that that will help to set the context a bit in terms of what we're talking through today. Moving to the next slide, we're going straight into the 5 P's of partnership. So they are planning, prospecting, pitching, piloting, and then finally partnering. And so the first bullet, well, first of all, this is a series, and we feel that going through these in order is typically the most beneficial way to be able to identify a partner and finally get them engaged and kind of cement them as a partner. But some of you are on different P's. Some of you are maybe stuck at trying to figure out how to pitch your program and your students. Some of you are at the point where you're trying to think about how to pilot or get a particular new partner into the fold, into an activity that will introduce them to your student population. Some of you are still prospecting. Maybe COVID came around, you lost some of your partners who were more in person. Now you're thinking about who can come in terms of remote activities, and you're still looking to get more partners around the table. Others of you are in the planning phase where you are maybe reevaluating your scope and sequence, and you're trying to think about where partners can fit in. So everybody is probably in a different place on this spectrum. We would love to be able to say we're all at that last partnership phase where you have partners and it's just about deepening and strengthening the relationship. But, as with anything, these are all kind of in flux. and folks are, on a journey with their partners. So we respect that you guys may be at different points depending on who the partner is. So moving to the next slide. And thinking about planning, you want to think deeply about how do you know what help you need from your partner. Before you even bring a partner into the conversation, you as a school staff and as a team need to be really clear about what it is that partner is coming in to do. Adding a lot of people to your partnership table is great, but if folks are not necessarily sure exactly how they're going to contribute and if they're a good fit, is definitely going to make things a little bit more difficult. More hands in the pot become a little bit difficult in terms of how to manage the number of people who are giving input and providing services. What exactly do you want to ask for? Before you go out and interview someone or bring them in, you want to know exactly what the ask is. Are you looking for internships specifically? Are you looking for job shadows? Are you looking for opportunities for students who might be in part of the special populations bucket? You want to be clear as to why this person is coming into the fold. And then finally, how do you spell out the touch points between partners and students? Clearly, as part of your CTE programming, you guys are aware of all the different types of activities through the WBL scope and sequence that partners can be involved in. But are the partners aware of what that looks like? Are the partners sure about what the types of activities that they can provide are? And are they just thinking about volunteers? Sometimes partners have not worked with high schools before, and they may have more of an experience with maybe college students. That definitely is not the same thing. And I think oftentimes people tend to take for granted that they can just fall in line and work with your schools if they haven't done so in the past. So just making sure that you are prepping your ask and spelling out what it is that you're looking for is hopefully going to make things a lot easier for you as you look at what partners you want to bring to the table. And thinking about what the types of documents you'll be actually going to create as you go through each phase is also going to be critical as well. In the planning phase, your WBL scope and sequence is going to be key. Understanding what activities and events you want to include partners in and where those things fall during the year. You want to have a record of your current partners and their commitments so you can kind of lay out like who's doing what. Do you have anybody doing internships? Do you have anybody doing job shadows? You want to be able to have the breadth of experiences for your students and not just have it be one-sided in terms of what partners are doing. So that's going to be key. And then having some type of MOU or partnership agreement is also helpful so that partners know year to year or even semester by semester what it is they're committing to with your school. So all of those things are really helpful. Moving to the next P. Prospecting. How do you know which institutions will be best able to meet your needs as partners? It's great to say you have IBM, you have Microsoft, some of these big names, Amazon, they look good on paper, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are the right fit. Obviously, your pathway is going to determine what type of partners you're going to be courting in the future, but also, are they the right fit for your students? Knowing your students here is going to be really critical. And I think it really helps to do your homework on who these partners are, what their role has been in the community, what is their stake in terms of the pathway that your young people are going to be going into. And then also, how have they shown that they want to be involved? Some partners have a really strong CSR department, corporate social responsibility, where they actually are making strides in the community. Others are looking to really build a pipeline and hiring young people, specifically in neighborhoods where maybe the diversity is there and where they're looking to, engage specifically. So you want to be very sure about what their past and their intentions are before you go ahead and start to pitch to them. How do you decide who you're going to approach and in what order? So are you going to someone who you met at a mixer or some type of networking event? Or are you looking specifically to connect to HR or someone from an ERG? Those are all different asks. And depending on who it is that you connect with, you may get a different answer in terms of whether or not that company or agency or organization can be involved. So that's very key as well. And then who are your ideal partners? Obviously, like I said, the big names are out there. Some of them are already pretty stretched in terms of the types of schools and the number of schools that they've engaged in. But there are other companies that are up and coming that maybe no one has really tapped yet. And so sitting down and thinking about who do you want, who would you want to add to your partnership list is really important before you go out and make that ask. So in this particular time period, when you're prospecting, you're thinking about the partner recruitment process. Is there any type of system in your school as to how partners are brought on board? Is it typically the principal that will walk somebody around, when you're in person, if they're actually looking to give folks a snapshot into your school? Or is it you, the work-based learning coordinator? How does that process occur? Is it a handoff? Do you guys usually have a system? What are the criteria and the priorities in terms of your prospecting? So what are you looking at? Have you and leadership had a conversation about, like, it would be great if we could get X person from X company to come in? Hopefully that kind of visioning has already been done before you start thinking about asking a partner to come into the school. And then thinking about, like, putting a list together of the institutions or the companies that you would love to be able to get your foot in the door into is also key, because sometimes folks are in a network. So if you don't get them, you might be able to get other folks that they liaise with who are in that same industry. So sometimes having a list and a physical list you can keep going back to is very helpful. Moving to the next P, we have pitching. This is where people tend to focus a lot of their energy. How do you approach the partner prospects that you have in mind? Some of our schools have really, really great marketing materials. Some of you guys have really glossy pamphlets. You guys have actual video content. You have things on your website that really highlight the school, highlight the students, and highlight, exactly what it is a partner can do or is doing at the school. So those types of things are really helpful, especially if you're looking to court a new partner. They can kind of see that you have a pretty good arsenal of tools that you would pull out when you're looking to really kind of advertise your school. How do you establish contact with the right point person? Again, if you have a company in mind and you may have gotten a contact, who is the person who's going to lead you eventually to maybe HR, who I think would be probably a great connection to have, especially if you're thinking about internships in the long term. What do you say about your school? How do you decide what actually gets put out there in terms of content that folks who are outside of your school community are going to see? And what does that look like? Not everybody has, budget for swag. I don't think any of us have it at this point. But some schools are really good at advertising and really putting students out there, whether that's through ambassadors, students who have been graduates of the program who can come back and speak, teachers who maybe have a second life, doing things outside of, their school commitments. There are so many ways to be able to get the word out about what you guys are doing. So wondering what that strategy looks like and knowing what that is really important. And then what do you ask for first? Once you've established that someone's interested to get involved in your school, you don't want to bombard them with the whole list of things that you would like them to do. How do you kind of do a soft ask and start off maybe having them come in and see an event, and then maybe start off with like a career panel where they just come in and introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do at the company, et cetera. I think there's definitely an order of how you work your way up into eventually asking for some of the bigger things like internships and job shadows. So what are the things that you would think about in terms of tools that you would have in this particular phase would be your school website. Do you have an information kit for an outside audience? Do you have new partner outreach protocols? So email templates and things that are like welcoming somebody who's from the outside of the school. Do you have thank you emails and things that are already queued up for when your students have met a partner and you can go back and say, we appreciated meeting you. Do you have an elevator pitch of sorts for a partner? what's your prioritized list of partner asks? So again, going back to your leadership, do you actually have a vision as to what that is going to look like? And who should be actually the first person that you're going to go to and reach out to establish that new partnership? Do you have student ambassadors? And if you haven't identified who those students are yet, how will you kind of make the selection for students who are actually good representatives of your school? How diverse is that list of students? Sometimes we tend to go to the same kind of stars all of the time, the students who are really articulate, who are doing well academically, but there are a plethora of other students who might just be waiting for that great opportunity to shine. And sometimes maybe thinking about the process by which you select ambassadors might be helpful. Also, partnership conduits. What are some of the things that you're doing in terms of welcoming partners? Are you, like I said, bringing them in for a walkthrough? Are they having an opportunity to sit in at other events so they can kind of get excited about what's already happening? So those are some things to really think about during the pitching stage that will really help to propel you forward as, something that a company or an agency wants to get engaged in doing. Moving to the next slide, P number 4 is piloting. So what is the strongest foot to begin a new partnership on? That's a really tough question. Sometimes people are not sure, what the ask should look like and how to really start developing that partnership in a way that will really help the collaboration between the school and the company or agency. In terms of building momentum, you want to be able to be sure that your size of collaboration is just right so that they can go up from there. You definitely don't want to start off with internship and then there's no way to go. It might make sense to have a small ask and then build your way up so that eventually, as you continue to develop your partnership agreement, there's room for year 1, 2, and 3 to look a little bit different if the company is staying engaged. And then who does what? Some of our schools have industry liaisons, folks who are actually designated through the company to be able to, mediate and plan events and really be that person who is the conduit for resources and for volunteers to be selected and to be shuttled to the school. Some folks may not have that particular person identified, but there might be somebody on the school side who has taken that on. More than likely, it's the WBL coordinator. So I know you guys already have so much on your plate, but often it's you who is brokering these relationships, is doing the outreach, is doing the responding to the emails, is talking to the principal. And it's a lot. It's a huge, huge ask for you guys to have all of this on you. So it's often good to really spread this out as a whole school activity and get other folks involved so that, maybe it's not just you identifying the company, but it's maybe you working with the ELA or the math teacher saying, hey, can I show somebody your class, in period number 2 so that they can come in and see what you guys are working on and relate it back to the specific pathway. So it's always good to really get other folks involved and making sure that it's not an uneven lift. So, just continuing to think about what kinds of things would you need in this particular section of the P's. You definitely don't want to rush the decision. So in terms of first collaborations where WBL experiences are concerned, you want to identify what's ideal for that partner. If they're a small size company, they obviously may not be able to commit a huge number of volunteers. So maybe doing an event that's really small with a few people and hopefully kind of whetting their appetite will be the best way to start the engagement happening. Thinking about your welcomes and your onboarding process for partners. Again, just because a partner is identified doesn't mean that they're right for your school. So you do want to make sure that you're vetting who is making an ask or who is interested. They may need to go through, that process of fingerprinting and clearance through the DOE. Even that can be a little bit prickly if folks are not aware that, hey, if I have to be on this school inside the premises of the school, I have to be cleared first. I can't just show up. I can't just come at a late night event if students are going to be there. And then thinking about the process for drafting a partnership agreement. That's not something you want to take on lightly, but it is helpful to have folks reflect on what are we agreeing to do, and working on maybe including them in your steering committee eventually and thinking about ways that they can make a longer commitment. And so the final P is partnership. And so moving to the next slide, once we get here, how do you keep the partner active in the community? How do you help those partnerships to mature and to grow? How do you check in with them regularly? And then also how you ask for more support. So those are some things that people are actually doing right now already. And there are some things that you can hopefully utilize to be able to get those questions answered. You want to make sure that you have a regular status check with your partners. And as we move to the summer, as people start taking on interns for SYEP, for career SYEP, for ISP, definitely it's going to be critical for us to be able to get that feedback loop closed. So once the partner has had the interaction with the student, how do they feel that, how do they know how it went? The evaluations are a start, but you also want to have a meeting to be able to come back and say, how did this go? What's some constructive critique that you want to offer the school so that we can continue to improve how we're showing up to partners. So that's going to be really important as we go on through the next few months. And then also just making a record of your current partnerships and their commitments and looking back and saying, where are some things that we need to improve on? Where can we strengthen either the folks that are doing this work or the partners that are actually here around the table? So constant improvement is something that we want to encourage. So I know I said a lot. We do have in the resources an actual document that really outlines all of these phases, and will hopefully help you to think through where you are now and where you want to get to. Knowing that it's a process and that it's not overnight, hopefully will not frustrate you guys, because it's for, especially in COVID, it is going to be something that we continue to work on, and it's never going to be perfect necessarily, but there are some schools that are doing this really, really well. So I want to move to the next slide, because now we're going to talk about the student population and the ways that you want to message what your students are doing and who they are to your partners. And I will pass it over to Larry for this section.
Thanks, Akia. Good afternoon, everybody. So just in the spirit of identifying partners, kind of helps me to think about it as speed dating or developing some sort of relationship in your personal life. And right now I'm thinking of two type of speed daters. There's the one who just doesn't care. He or she is just there because they want to go on a whole bunch of dates or whatever the case may be. But then you also have the speed dater who is there with a checklist and they know what they want to get out of this. And for some of them, they're looking for like a long-term relationship, or they're looking for marriage, whatever the case may be, but they have their checklist, right? And I want you guys to look at this and think of it as a checklist that revolves around your student population, right? So just as an overview, these are some of the things that you should be thinking about as it relates to student population when you're researching your partnering organizations. So you have culture. How well does the culture of your school align with the culture and the values of the organization you're looking to partner with? And if we're talking about in terms of your aligning your values, is this organization used to partnering with schools? Because if they're not used to partnering with schools, then knowing that ahead of time is probably going to help you when you're getting ready to showcase the type of student population that you're dealing with, right? Messaging. Do I have a different message for my different tier of student? What skills and abilities should I highlight during the partnership meetings? And how transparent should I be about the negative? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but recognizing that you have students that fit like in three different types of tiers. You have your high level students and mid-level students, and you have your low performing students. But how do we make sure that there are opportunities for all of them? How do we message that to organizations? just to, before working with the DOE, like I was working with a nonprofit organizations, and usually if they had like a grant with someone, and maybe let's say Robin Hood, maybe they were coming to visit the students, the organization would make sure like, okay, we need to showcase like our 5 best students, just so that, we can show that these are the students that we represent. And I always felt like that's a falsehood. There's nothing wrong with messaging that, hey, we're looking for opportunities for all tiers of our students. It's just a matter of thinking about what that message is going to look like, and how can I showcase these students in a positive light. Longevity. Are you looking for a one and done situation, or are you looking to create a pipeline of opportunities? Building partnership means forecasting long-term relationships with students. Both are potential options to explore. So you'll only know, only you will know which option is best for your students. Like for me personally, I would always lean more towards the building out the pipeline. But because you're actually in the school and you know your students better than we do, the one and done may be something that caters to your students a little bit better. And then we have showcasing. What is the best way to showcase the talents of the students from my school? How can I show that my students will be an invaluable asset to the partner? Some of you are already doing it, but creating a website landing page that speaks to your students' characteristics and skills, customizing marketing material, and as the employer or as an organization, like I want to see that, because I want to know what it is that I'm investing in. Even if I'm not investing money, like I want to see what I'm giving up my time for, and I want to see the whole picture. Like, and I want to see there is a way to create that, the best picture out of the whole picture, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I want to see that, okay, great, you're giving me students that, they're ready to go. But then what about the other students? What about the mid-tier students who need that little help? What type of opportunities can we provide for that with them? And just to speaking to some of my colleagues, a lot of times during the conversations between schools and organizations, some of the partners, they want to know like, hey, what can we do to help more? What other opportunities can we provide? It's just a matter of us saying, you know what, I'm going to be brave enough to ask what other supports we can survive. Like we can't just look at partnerships and say, oh my gosh, I have a partnership with Amazon. And then we become so enamored with the name Amazon that we actually lose sight of the fact that we're doing this for student population. So these are just some things to keep in mind when you want to think about preparing for engagement with partner organizations. And we actually have 3 tools that we're going to be sharing with you at the end. But we have the partnership needs assessment, partnership needs assessment. We actually have a checklist for what makes a strong prospect, and our WBL activity planner. I'm just going to click on it real quick so that I can share with you guys. So this is just a picture. Hopefully everyone can see it, of the partner needs assessments. How do I know what additional partners I need? So it's a tool that provides a look at what's already in place, and then additional partners you may want to bring into the conversation. So if you look, it's broken down by WBL experience, career awareness, career exploration, career preparation. But then it also asks questions: what type of new partners might be able to provide this experience? What would be the ask of the partners in time, material resources, staffing? How might the ask be framed in a formal partnership agreement? And what would make this a quality WBL experience? And how can I track students with this experience in real time? I'm sorry, the screen is very small and I'm blind. So that is the first tool that we want to share. Then we have our checklist. And like I said, I apologize if you can't see it, but it will be shared with you at the end. And this is just a checklist. It's a more in-depth evaluation of how well you align with your potential partners. So just highlighting some of them. Does the organization or company reflect our CTE theme, which is very important? If I need a large partner so that collaborations can be numerous and multi-departmental, and or so that students can see a variety of careers in action. Is it large enough? Is it associated with any of our current partners, or do we have staff, parents, or community members who might know someone there? And these are just some of the questions highlighted, but like I said, at the end, we'll share it with you so that you can take an in-depth look at it. And the last tool that we're going to share with you too is the WBL Activity Planner, where you can look at the activities and where partners can be plugged in. Um, so once again, if you look at it, you're looking at the WBL activities based on career awareness, career exploration, career preparation, and then the grade targeted. So like as an example, we've highlighted base, targeted grade 11, given a description, primary skill building block, secondary skill building block, reflection tool, archive, exit ticket survey, career interest area, the industry partner contribution need, remote modification, and special populations consideration. These are all things that you sit down and basically plug in what already exists and what it is that you might need to, what it is that you can do, what it is that you can gain by partnering with a potential organization.
And Larry, I dropped all of those in the chat, so
You got
everyone should have those.
Thank you. So, and earlier, Takia was mentioning, and under the P for prospecting, who are our ideal candidates, who are ideal partners, and a lot of that is going to be based on the students that you're servicing, and unfortunately, there are a lot of times where one organization might not be able to take on all of the students that we have. Um, and by no means am I saying that this is the way that it should be broken down, but this is just the way we kind of envision all students could get opportunities by partnering with different levels of organizations. So with large corporations, you kind of have your high level skill students who usually take advantage of those types of opportunities. And then we also included, well, who can you get in touch with for those opportunities? Usually you can get in touch with the ERG, which is the Employee Resource Group. And most large corporations have ERGs. Um, then we have the mid-sized corporations. With the mid-sized skilled students, I'm sorry, mid-sized skilled students, and we're matching them with mid-sized corporations. And usually for opportunities, you can get in touch with maybe the HR department, the volunteer or internship department. And for low-level skilled students who definitely need an opportunity or maybe activities, then you might want to get in touch with small corporations, the mom and pop companies, because you can communicate with them directly. Usually, you wouldn't go through a ERG or a HR volunteer department. You can actually speak one-on-one and basically showcase the different skill levels that your students have and maybe what activities that they can provide for your students. And by no means are those the only stakeholders that we're representing. But the other people that you might want to get involved in that conversation would be an ERG leader, HR manager, the corporate social responsibility manager, business owners, nonprofit directors, and the Borough Chamber of Commerce representative. And I mean, this is just a short list. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are other entities and other stakeholders that we could have included. But this is just a way for us to make sure that everyone gets represented at the table. Takia, I don't know if you have anything to add before I move on. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that, Larry. I think it's important for folks to be aware of who's in their immediate neighborhood. Obviously, the businesses that are around your schools are probably the best first place to start. The people who are closest to you often are the ones that are untapped, because folks look far and wide thinking about, the breadth of the partnership, especially instead of just depth. So just being aware of, the mom and pop stores and the smaller businesses that are in the neighborhood who maybe haven't, been looked at before. Clearly, COVID has changed the landscape. So a lot of people maybe had not stayed afloat if they were there previously, but it might make sense to just survey who's around closest to you more recently, just to get a sense of what the changes might look like, and who else you could be reaching out to. So that's all I wanted to add, Larry. Thanks.
Thank you. So just in thinking about strategies to a successful partnership, these are just some of the things that we're highlighting um, that we want to share with you. And the first is show awareness, demonstrating that school staff and industry partner understand the demographics and the skill level of students. Now, this part requires some type of research on your school's mission, their values, as well as the values of the organization that you're looking to partner with. It goes beyond the name of the organization. Sometimes the organization's name shines so bright that you don't think about the students, like I mentioned before. But this is your time to sit down and really think, like, all right, who do I want to provide opportunities for? You know, and you want to make sure, like we've been mentioning all along, that your mission, the mission and the values outlined, they match those of whoever it is that you're partnering with. Commit to tangible outcomes. Show a clear path to student progress and success. Emphasize flexibility, accessibility, and impact on career and self-fulfillment. What do you want to get out of this partnership, and how will you know if you're being successful? And this is not a knock to anyone in the room, but it's more of a what we don't want people to think about this experience as is, okay, I got my student an internship, boom, that's it. Because work-based learning is so much more than just the internship. It's about the activity. But then how do we know that students are being successful in what they're doing? Yes, they're logging in the hours. Yes, they're getting paid. But the truth of the matter is that even if every student does not get an internship opportunity, you want to make sure that all of your students, by the time they graduate, are job ready, are career ready, even if they're going to college. Like, you want to be able to instill those things in them while they're here. And you can only do that by having tangible outcomes and by having touch points with the students to make sure that they are making progress. The third is acknowledgement of challenges. Anticipate questions and communicate answers tailored to the student solution, and be readily available to provide information on the next step. And this part requires a bit of transparency on your part. How comfortable will you be when discussing challenges that might arise with students? This is when we start to contemplate, like, the who should I send? I don't want them to make us look bad. But if you're transparent about some of the challenges, then you'll find that your partner organization, then you'll find out if your partner organization is in it for the long haul, or if it was just like that one-time experience that we talked about. You want to you don't want, and mind you, and now I'm going to revert back to dating again. It's like that secret or that thing you don't want to mention during the date, but then when it comes out, it's the turnoff, and then you become the subject of the subject of conversation, when it's like, let me tell you about that date I just went on. Oh my gosh, like, he seemed cool on the first date, and by the third date, he showed himself. Like, you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that you're finding a way during the conversation to make sure that you're letting people know, like, hey, listen, this is the different array of students that we deal with at our school. And some partners know that already, but it's still worth mentioning. Convening a round table. Build capacity based on ultimate goals established by the partners. Now, with this one right here, I want to, don't throw the kitchen sink. Don't use the kitchen sink mentality on who should be a part of the conversation. Make sure that everyone that's around the table for the conversation, that it makes sense for them to actually be there. Because, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, all of this is going to tie into that student population that you service. You want to make sure that people are not just in the conversation in name. You want to make sure that they're a part of the conversation, period. There's some schools who operate where it's the principal or the assistant principal who's in conversation with the organization. and maybe the WBL coordinator is there to kind of make sure that the ship is running properly. And then you have some schools who operate where the WBL coordinator is actually in conversation with the partner to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And you know, I can't really sit here and say which is better than which, but at the same token, you just want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table and everybody is conversing with each other. Assigning a liaison. Choose someone whose focus is to maintain the quality of the program based on student need. I mean, and I'd like to say, it goes without saying that that's probably the WBL coordinator, but you just want to make sure that you have that person is designated, and like I said, that they're always a part of the communication, which leads me to the last one, which is commitment to communication. Establish communication that is open and frequent. Commit to discussing high-level changes as they arise. Once again, if nothing else, you know, if whether it's any type of relationship, communication is always key. And organizations and schools should not just be communicating when something goes wrong, but they should also be communicating and building on next steps on how to further the partnership between them, right? So you want to make sure that you have as many touch points as allowed. And I'll stop there for now. And Takia, are you there?
I'm here, Larry.
Cool. And
So we want to open it up just in case folks have questions about anything that we went over. You know, we understand that there might be situations in schools where maybe there isn't a current WBL coordinator. So these things may become a little bit more difficult if there isn't someone who can take the reins. I know sometimes folks are acting, you know, the de facto person, and maybe they are not necessarily consistent, or there might have been someone who has left or who doesn't have the capacity to do that work. And so just having some type of system at your school that will survive, you know, changes within your staff. That's also helpful because you don't want all of this work to go out the window if someone leaves. You know, if someone is the sole, partnership developer, if you will, and they're not there anymore, you run the risk of losing your partners and having to start this process all over if that person is not available. And I see Gav has a hand raised, so I will yield the floor.
Yeah, thanks to Kia and Larry. This is a pretty good presentation. I wanted to ask this question on behalf of my buddy Gerard. I know he had to log off, but I want to know this also. Do you have any more information regarding the fingerprinting requirements for partners, or is there a special protocol partners have to go through in order to do certain activities with our kids? Because this has come up in the past where we're not sure whether or not certain volunteers need to be fingerprinted or not. Do you have any more light to shed on that?
That's a great question. As far as I'm aware, and I know there are other folks on this call who can speak to this too, students who are going to be engaged with a partner in person, especially on the school premise, those specific partners or volunteers need to be fingerprinted. As long as that person is going to have an extended exposure with a student, you know, typically without staff there, but even with staff being there, typically coming into the school for an extended period of time would necessitate someone to be fingerprinted. Obviously, you know, folks are coming from different organizations and companies. Some organizations that have been, you know, contracted to work with the DOE have their own system of funneling volunteers through the fingerprinting process. For new volunteers, in a virtual space, we found that having chaperones, whether they be from, you know, DOE Central or from the school community in the virtual room with students, that would definitely then kind of nullify the need for fingerprinting if there's a presence of staff within the virtual space, which makes things a little bit easier. But obviously, if a student is going to be on a job shadow or an interview an internship where staff is not present, whether that be virtual or in person, again, long extended periods of time with some type of industry engagement would definitely necessitate the fingerprinting. Now, the fingerprinting process, can look very different. Some folks will go through the PETS process, which is the fingerprinting process through DOE Central. Others have used GoPass in the past, and I know that that's a separate process from DOE Central, if I'm not mistaken. And thank you, Jasenia, for dropping that in the chat. The costs vary, but definitely everybody who has engaged with students in a long-term relationship has had to go through that. And I know that other schools have kind of gotten this down to a science. So I think if folks have like extenuating questions about fingerprinting, certainly you can reach out to me. I've been helpful with some schools actually getting volunteers fingerprinted, and I can say more there. It's very specific to the organization, to the school, to what the actual engagement will look like. And so, if they're going to be mentors, for example, and that's a long-term commitment, and the touch points with students will be multiple and varied, that would definitely necessitate fingerprinting. So it really depends. But if folks really need like more specific questions answered on that, I would definitely say please message me or email me after this.
I'm sorry, Tiki. I'm not trying to take over the whole thing. I'm going to
No,
do one more thing and then I'll stop and give somebody else a chance. But I see that Kenneth raised up the same point I wanted to raise as well, where are we saying that only partners that visit the school grounds need to be fingerprinted? Because we have our interns that work in all sorts of different places, and those supervisors, the vast majority are not fingerprinted. So are we saying that you must be fingerprinted as long as you are on school grounds, but once the kid is away from the school grounds, such as an internship, the fingerprinting isn't necessary? Is that the logic behind it?
No, I wanted to be clear that if the engagement is going to be a length of time, especially if it relates to the student being exposed to one or two specific people on a regular basis, whether that's an internship or a job shadow, I would think that fingerprinting would be factored in as well. So for example, if someone is coming in for a career panel and they're going to be just basically online on Zoom, talking about their career, and it's a one-time event, and there is a DOE representative in the virtual room while this individual is talking about their career, there wouldn't be a need for fingerprinting then. However, if that person were going to be doing a career panel at the school and invited to come back, then definitely them being on the premises would then say, okay, yes, they're going to be exposed to students, maybe in a long-term situation. If they're a mentor eventually to see the same handful of students on a regular basis, then they would definitely need to be fingerprinted. Now, off-site, if that person is going in for an internship, I know that not all of our internship supervisors have been fingerprinted, but I think it depends on the relationship that that company or organization has with the school, and whether if that's going to be a long-term commitment. More than likely, school staff has encouraged for fingerprinting to happen because it would mean that more than one cycle of student will be engaging with the same few staff or organization members on a regular basis. Then I think fingerprinting comes into play. There are some hard and fast rules that I don't have the ability to go into right now, which is why I'm saying if folks have like specific questions about this, I'd be happy to go over it over email so we don't take up the entire session on this. I know it's an interesting question now that we're mostly in a virtual space, but there are some nuances that I think would be lost if we try to go into it now. So for those of you who have continued questions, please email me, and then we can make time and move forward with some of the other content for today, if that's okay. Looking in the chat, I think we have a couple other things that Jasenia has been gracious enough to drop. www.nycservice.org has some specific references on page 172. Also, nycenet.edu has some interesting points that you guys might want to look over. So please check those links out. Omari was able to drop some additional must be fingerprinted charts. So hopefully that will also add some context to what I'm saying. And then Kenneth said, that will likely heavily reduce the number of internship hosts since fingerprinting costs money and may be cumbersome as a process for the host to navigate. I see that being a turnoff in many ways. Yes, I know that that has been a turnoff for some folks, but I think anybody who's really serious about working with our young people will find ways around that. I know that's a conversation that can be sticky, but we have had folks who have successfully navigated that and have figured out whether the costs can be something that they can take care of, and then the school sometimes can pitch in. It just depends on where that conversation is and who the partner is and where they are in the partnership development process. So again, very individualized and nuanced answers that probably would be best given offline if we want to continue to have the conversation. So I am going to move to the next slide if it's okay. If there aren't any additional questions that are not fingerprint related, we're going to go to the next section of today's session, which is our fireside chat. And I will again pass the baton over to Larry.
Thanks, Akia. So presentation slides are always nice, but I think what's even better is when we're actually hearing from individuals who are putting these things into practice. And this afternoon, we're highlighting someone who puts it into practice, and she does an exemplary job at doing so. We have Ms. Carol Sun, who is the WBL coordinator at Manhattan Early College School for Advertising. So I'm going to ask Carol if she can just unmute herself and give a brief introduction.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. And I love being here with my CTE peeps. It's not an easy job. I came from industry at 25 years experience as a graphic designer, and then I entered the great uncharted waters of working for the DOE 18 years ago. And I got involved with CTE. I'm a founding teacher at Mecca. In fact, I was the first hire there. We're a school that is all about advertising and media, and we're located in the Murray Bertrand campus.
Thank you for that, Carol. Nice talking to you. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions, okay?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Go right ahead.
Who manages the relationships with the partners at your school?
I do. I'm going to say this. I am uniquely situated that I am the school leader for CTE. And since I was a founding teacher, I was a person given the task of building the relationships with our industry partners. We are lucky in that our industry partner is actually a professional organization called the 4As, which is not an agency, but it's a membership organization that most agencies belong to.
Okay, thank you. What is the role of the WBL coordinator in partnership development?
I believe the WBL is, on one hand, you're tasked to create work experiences for your school. So it's a natural extension that you would be the person at your school to build the relationships with the industry, whether it's a giant agency or an individual person. But that would be me.
Okay, thank you. How have your current partners been able to pivot after COVID?
I would say in our industry, there was a lot of awareness to begin with about the issues about diversity and inclusion. And because equity became such a big topic during the pandemic because of Black Lives Matter, there was even more interest now because of the pandemic. Our main partner, as I said, is the 4As. Through the school is in its, I think we're in our 7th or 8th year. Our relationship with the 4As has gone through highs and lows. different people coming and going from the organization.
Mhm.
And now I have a smaller team that I work with, but um, they have been very good about keeping all our major WBL WBL experiences all moved online and have been pretty good. I mean, considering everything, it has gone pretty well.
Thanks, Cal. Are you still able to engage new partners?
Uh, yes, we through the 4As has introduced us to some new agencies, smaller agencies that we're working with now, and typically what we do is we start out with a tiny little bite, something that is a low stakes for them to become involved with. And I would say actually this is a practice that we've used since the school began. We didn't, it's kind of like in the world of having a marriage with someone, you know, you don't come out the door and say, let's get married,
Right.
run down the street. Really, you want to go on a lot of dates before you decide that you're going to spend a lot of time together. So we still do that.
Nice. Is there a vetting process you take your partners through?
I think it's more after all these years, I kind of have an understanding of what works, and in terms of what a partner can provide, and between what they say they will do and what they can really provide. And I build my expectations really based on what people do and not what they say that they will do. I, you know, so through these small interactions, I can see whether a partner is someone who really is with us for the long term, or there's someone that's just here for um, a year or so.
Gotcha.
But Larry, what I want to say that I actually, what I found is that building relationships, it's not building relationships with a company, it's building relationships with a person. And it's the people who are really passionate about helping kids in underserved communities improve their lives. Those are the ones that are going to be long-term partners. And I'm also going to say this is like in my industry, people move from place to place.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for someone I know to work in one agency and then a couple of years later there's someone else. But that doesn't mean that they still can't help you when they go to the next place or whatever. So that's why I'm saying like really building, if you use your common sense about like relationships that you build to build your own professional career, building these relationships for your students is no different.
Thank you for that, Cal. That I definitely appreciate that. How do you include your partners in the CTE curriculum?
Um, we we have like I would say there may be three kinds of things that we do, and I'm gonna also say that my school is also very fortunate in that we're school-based SYEP. So the need for mentors is something that we do a lot, but a mentor is not someone that necessarily meets with, you know, one student 12 times a year. We use mentors to come in to do speed dating, to learn about career exploration in a very kind of broad way. Then we'll also use mentors to come in to talk about their careers in advertising and media. And also the 4As will, and some of our agencies are actually putting on giant career day events for us. So it's really uh, speed dating, mentoring. That's one thing. Then they're like mock interviews, and then they're big career day events.
Thank you, Cal. You know what, you kind of answered the question because I mean, having seen for myself just how what it looks like is how you're able to engage all of the students in some sort of activity. You know, like I wanted you to expound on that, but I think you think you pretty much did, unless you have anything else that you want to add to the
Um,
different activities that students
well,
experience.
I'm just going to say with the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure every school is going through this. How to keep kids engaged. How do we deal with kids shutting off their cameras, not turning on their mics, all sorts of things. Um, like today, I mean, we did a big mentoring event for our ninth and 10th grade for the past 2 weeks, and we had one today. I think it's really important for a WBL person to be creative and also be open-minded. Like, WBL shouldn't just live in your room or with your teachers. Um, in my school now, I am trying to get our advisory program more involved, um, because I think one the more if you only keep WBL siloed off to one place, then kids are only going to look for that in one place, where WBL is in their whole world,
Right.
you know. So even how they bring themselves to their classrooms to, be resilient. Like, being resilient is a top 10 employability skill. Learning how to talk to someone, to communicate through Zoom or through the pandemic is a really important piece, because work from home is not going away.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for that. And I mean, those are the questions that I have for you. Hopefully, you're open to answering some questions because there are a couple of questions in the chat. Um, you want me to just read them off to you?
Sure. I'm here. I'm always into this. So
Nice. All
fire
right.
away.
All right. So we have a question from Luis Rojas. How much time did you dedicate to your WBL activities, and did it get better after the relationship was working?
Um, so, Luis, maybe you could clarify your question. What do you mean? How much time? Do you mean like how much time do I work on WBL, or how much times do the students get in their class?
No, no, no. How much time do you, Carol? I teach, and I want to get my kids to these career, eye-opening supports, right? So that they can make really good decisions when they graduate. But you know, I'm trying to cement my time management in a way that makes sense. So, of course, like this meeting to me, it seems a little overwhelming, the amount of work um, that
Uh,
it seems to be.
yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like after school, did you,
So
2 hours, 3 hours, like that kind of work? Because I see sometimes we're talking about it and not really talking about the actual experience of the teacher or the work-based learning
okay.
coordinator. Yeah.
So I am a very hardworking, any WBL person to do your job. You are really doing like more than one job. Most teach, and then are asked to do set up your human resource person for your school. You're also the payroll person for your school, because you have to manage the payroll for all your students, and you also are a teacher. So in my job at Mecca, for the past 2 years, I manage the entire school's WBL. So that's for um, 500 kids. And I now teach 4 classes, and I manage my department. So, and I also manage our SYEP program, which is 200 positions. So
Wow, Cal.
I every you know what I'm gonna say. I I don't separate, like, now I'm doing this and now I'm doing that. I see it all as like
One.
one. I think if you compartmentalize it,
Mhm.
maybe that's not, for me, that doesn't work. I look
Okay.
at it as how, I mean, honestly, and I will say this, and I come from industry and I became a teacher because of some big changes in my life. But honestly, I feel like we are the people who can make the greatest difference in a student's life. And honestly, it's a life and death issue to me for students in New York City because um, if you're from an underserved community, what are the careers? What careers can you do? Where are you going to get the training? Where does the conversation start to become a professional? There are no more jobs to just dig ditches and holes. There are lots of jobs that will disappear because of automation and artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So, like I think about like I look at skills in a big broad way, and then I look at their technical skills and specific knowledge to your industry. And honestly, I think that's a tiny part of it. I think the bigger part of it is getting a kid ready to go work and understand what they need to do. So um, every every grade at Mecca has specific events that we target to them. So like the ninth and 10th grade, it's all about how does my personality influence what I want to do with the future, and then we start getting them focused on how can advertising or media be a career place for you. So, but I would say in my day, it's a big juggle. Um, like I said, I've been teaching for 18 years. So I have taught almost every class at my school, either at any course that's at my school I've taught, whether it was at Mecca or when I was in the Bronx. So I know the curriculum and I have a good idea of which projects work and are successful.
Mhm.
In every project that we do, there's some component of industry participation, whether it's like a mentor coming in, right? Or they have to present. But the kids don't always know that that's what we're doing to them. They just think they're doing their classwork. But you have to, like if you spend time, I would say,
Well, let
making
me,
a big strategy about
yeah,
what.
Carol, let me try to
Yeah,
narrow this down a little bit. So
sure.
let's say you pursued a partnership. In the beginning, did you find yourself working like maybe 5 times as much as opposed to after you got the partnership working?
Um, so now when a prospective partner comes to me,
Yeah.
um, we might have 2 or 3 meetings where over a period of time where we plan something together. And then it's like, I do this and they do that. Um, and, and so that might be, um 6 hours of time, like in that kind of conversation
Yeah.
and planning and emailing and stuff. But then now what I do is I make the bigger lift. I give the bigger lift to the partner. I tell them, you set up the, like with COVID, they set up the online experience. They gather their people and they structure them. And then what I do is I prepare the kids in the classroom.
Hey,
Okay.
Carol, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
That was good.
Carol, I just want to be conscious of the time before we move to the next
sure.
segment, but we did have one more question I was hoping to get to real quick. Carolyn asked, what are examples of the first asks for potential partners?
Like I said, I have these mentoring events. So first ask might be, hey, we're doing, like the event I had today was called Mentee to Mentee, or Mentee, Mentor to Mentee. So M to M. And I'll say, I'm looking for volunteers to spend 1 hour with our ninth and 10th grade and speed date and share how you got to your career path. Can you broadcast this to your employee groups? and see if you can get me some people to sign up. And I provide a poster which explains the event and a Google form which people use to sign up. And that's really how it really starts. And then the employee comes and hopefully they have a good experience, and then they bring their friends the next time.
Thank you, Carol. And if you do have any more questions for Carol, please drop them in the chat, but I'm going to turn it over to Takia for our next session. Thank you so much, Carol.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Always a pleasure to hear your, expertise and your suggestions. And, we constantly draw from, what you bring to the table on a regular basis. So I just want to say special thank you to you. And then thank you to all our CTE staff who were able to clarify the fingerprinting questions in the chat. We want you to refer to those specific links if you have additional questions, just to make sure that everybody's clear. I don't want to misinform anyone on this particular session. I just want to make sure you guys leave here with the correct information. So please refer to those. So moving to the next slide, we're going to head into our breakout session. And, if folks don't have any other questions for Carol, that was the open floor discussion that we just left.
Thank you, Carol.
So moving to the next slide, and thank you, Louis, for your questions. We want to make sure that you guys go into the right groups. So today we are going to have 3 groups. Last week we had 4. Unfortunately, we didn't have anyone who signed up for the 4th group. So we're going to narrow it down to 3. And then if you look on the screen, you'll see 1, 2, 3, what the groups will be discussing. So group 1, it's going back to documentation, if you will. So those who were in the documentation group for last week, we would encourage you to go into group 1. This is about building out your scope and sequence with partners in mind. We're hopeful that you will be able to get a little bit more out of, the kind of technical aspect of where to insert partners, depending on what it is you're looking to build out engagement-wise. Group number 2, cultivating relationships with remote or summer partners. So once you have gotten through your ISP or your summer engagements, how do you continue to nurture that relationship so that you have a partner that goes through the summer, not just ends at the summer? So that will hopefully be part of the discussion in group 2. And then group 3, utilizing CTE industry commissions to support your partner engagement. We do want to go back to making sure that you guys are using all avenues to be able to expand your partner net, if you will. And I know that the industry engagement team has some specific opportunities that might be helpful. So we will hopefully have everybody rename yourself, putting the number of the group that you would prefer in the front of your name, just like we did last week. So we know exactly what room to put you in. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. We do hope that all of you will come back from the breakouts. We do want to share out and really, have the wisdom that was talked about in the room surface for the entire group once we come back. So if we could have everybody rename right now, that would be great. If we don't have a number for you, you might be put into a random group that you are not as interested in. So we do want people to just take a minute and put themselves in the right group. And we're back. Thank you guys so much for taking the time and coming back with us. I know that every group had a little bit different conversations going on. So we just want to get a sense of what was discussed. I was in group 1, building out your scope and sequence with partners in mind. We ended up talking a lot about summer opportunities and the best way to be able to pivot from the summer into the school year with the partners that we have. And a lot of folks referenced SYEP and Career SYEP as places where partners can be developed. And it's important to think about, how those same opportunities, if your students who participated had a great relationship with partners that maybe you didn't have a hand in developing, how can you then follow up with those folks and say, hey, you had a great student, this person is from my school. Is there any way that that particular student could be hosted again, or maybe continue in an internship based on the experience that they had? all of the students who do a SYEP get evaluated, and many times, the staff from the organizations and companies that host write glowing references for the students that have great experiences. So really kind of using that and harvesting that as a way to be able to, springboard into a deeper partnership is always a good suggestion. We had folks talk about, how they may be the only one doing this work, and unfortunately it falls on them to really do the development and the hours that it goes that goes into doing the partner piece. And I just said to that hopefully we can pull in more members of the school community to be able to support as well, so that we don't get one person kind of building up the partnerships, and then if they leave, the whole thing kind of falling apart like a house of cards. So hopefully this is structure that will be built, and not just the reliance on you as the engine to be able to do the partner development. Because as I said in our breakout, oftentimes a partner is building a relationship with you and not with the school. So they will follow you, but unfortunately the students will be losing out if you decide that you are moving on. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully we can get someone from group 2 to share what the discussion was about. Anybody from group 2, cultivating relationships with remote or summer partners? I think Desmond and Audrey were in that group.
Sure. We had a very lovely and lively discussion. We talked about the potential for CTE, SYEP, and the ability to connect students to the, quite frankly, onerous application process. And then we also took a moment to discuss the TCAC. Oh, thank you, Gav. Much appreciated. To share your borough TCACs will take your SYEP applications, and they, if you give them a worksite agreement, if your school is open this summer, which I wouldn't have that information, you can have the students work there. I'm just looking at my notes here. Then it was the time and document management are key, and trying to get through the work of partner development by Mr. Boatswain, absolutely. And then utilizing today's workshop to really share information with other folks about that partnership development, and also sharing the work with other people as best we can is a very big piece of the development.
Thank you so much, Audrey. We appreciate that so much. And group 3, anybody want to report out what we talked about in terms of the commissions? I know that was Gav's group. Was there anyone who was a group member who wants to share a little bit about what was discussed?
I mean, I'll kick it off first, because I have a bunch of very shy people in my group for some reason. You paired up all the shy folks with me, but they're also the coolest bunch. But I wanted to say though that a lot of times, work-based learning coordinators, CTE teachers, you may feel as if you are the only person in your building that's holding the program together. And trust me, we totally understand that. And for any teacher that feels that way, you are not the only person that feels that way. All right. It is a very, very understandable situation you're in. Next up, I wanted to say, in terms of the various CTE industry connection series that the industry engagement team puts together, you should very much tap into these, not just the commission meetings that we have only, but also the CTE industry connection series, because this is your opportunity to interface directly with partners, and you can then develop those own individual partnerships as a result. All right, so you may not necessarily have to go out there to do cold calling and cold emailing. Wait for an event that me, Laura, or Corinne puts together, have your kids attend, and look, just follow up with us or our partners directly to say, hey, would you like to be a part of a mentoring activity we are creating for our specific school? Or would you like to speak particularly and specifically to our kids? So utilize these events that we do. And make sure that everything is documented, because Lewis brought up a great point that he's oftentimes not sure whether or not something counts as WBL or doesn't. I would say, as a good rule of thumb, just make sure everything is documented. Make sure that the kids fill out that reflection piece. If something is not documented, it didn't happen. All right. So we can help you guys, especially the industry engagement team. We could very much help you guys put together those virtual career days, those virtual networking events. And these things count as WBL for this particular school year. All right. We can't speak for in the future, but for the time being, if you want to get some of those hours out the way, please utilize the virtual events that we've been doing. And when you come to the commission meetings, don't just come to listen to the wonderful things that me and my team have to say. Use it as an opportunity to connect directly with the featured speakers and other partners in the room. We put these events together because we're trying to allow you a space where you can easily access partners who are interested in supporting the work that you do and the kids that you're teaching. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Gav. Appreciate it. Again, if you guys could just take a few seconds to kind of fill in the documents, the note catchers, we want to, utilize everything that is captured there, and we will be turning that back out to you once the boot camp is over, so you can all benefit from the questions, the gleanings, the words of wisdom from your group. And now we only have a few more minutes. I will turn it back over to Larry so he can close us out.
Thank you, Takia. So while I close this out, I'm just going to drop a poll just for people to fill out. But first, you'll see the link for the Institute Exit Survey. Please fill out the exit surveys if you're looking for CTLE credit. We also use that as a way for us to improve the session. So please, please, please pivot over and fill that out. Our second link we actually have is to our upcoming Institute sessions. So you'll find the Bootcamp session 3, 4, and all of our offerings through June 16th are located on our website. And then last, we have our resources folder, which contains all of the resources and tools that we went over during this workshop. So please, you'll have access to all of those things once Takia sends that out later on this week, early next week.
Before you end, Larry,
no, I'm not gonna end yet.
Jasenia wanted to just jump in with a quick word.
Okay.
Can I do now?
Yeah.
Please.
Oh, perfect. Sorry. So just wanted to do a shameless plug for anyone who needs thought partnership around supporting developing partners or thinking about supporting partners that meets the needs of English language learners. I am here to support that. I'm going to be dropping into the chat a Calendly invite that you can sign up for a one-on-one coaching session with me, and I'll just send you like some questions to help spark your thinking, and then we can thought partner and develop resources or whatever is needed during that session.
Thank you, Yesenia. And I see Takia also dropped the exit ticket into the chat. And on behalf of myself, Takia, and also our CTE supports, Yesenia, Audrey, Desmond, and Gav, we thank you for attending and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.